Is Marcus and Terry back with you live today from the old Talk Sober. So, how is everyone doing today? Today we are going to take a break from our normal letter reading and letter commenting to address a topic that I think is of utmost importance for the struggling alcoholic addict. So, let's dive right in. What we're going to talk about today is, what does sobriety look like for you? Now, I've been getting some comments that I talk a little too much, which is good because today I have a cough, so I can't talk that much. So we're going to have Terry go ahead and dive us into this topic. What does sobriety look like for you? So, Terry, how you doing?
I'm doing well, and sobriety, it looks pretty good for me most of the time, not all of the time, but yeah, sobriety's it's a good thing.
Cool. Okay, now I think one of the things that would be good for this topic is, when you were active in addiction, what did sobriety look like then? Like, what did you visualize? Because I know for me, I was like, life's going to suck. It's going to be boring. I'm not going to be able to deal with any of my problems. It was like a death sentence, you know? So what was it like in your mind?
Well, absolutely. That's the way I felt too. I thought, the funniest thing about when I was drinking is I didn't want to quit because I thought my life would become boring. I wouldn't be able to go out or anything. But really, those last couple years of drinking, I didn't go out. I sat there with a big old bottle watching Dr. Phil or bad shows like that.
Yeah.
And that was my life. And here I thought, when I sober up, I can't do anything. I'm going to have to stay home and be bored. And that's not at all the case. And life's good now.
Yeah. Cool.
But
And I think,
go ahead.
I think it's a lot. I think the alcohol lies to us, and I think the alcohol commercials have lied to us. And it tells us things like, without alcohol, we're not funny, we're not attractive, we're not desirable, we're not successful, we're not fun, we're not as outgoing. And what I've learned in sobriety is that these things are natural parts of you. So whoever you think you are when you drink, with the exception of when you get hosed and act like an idiot, like when you're slightly, drinking and you feel like you're the life of the party and you feel like everything's okay, I think what's happening is it just kind of dampens you enough to make you be who you are. Right? It gets rid of those things that, like, the apprehension. So you go to the party or whatever. Like a couple weeks ago, I went to a video marketing conference, and I hadn't been to one of these conferences since I stopped drinking because, I used to go to Affiliate Summit, and it was like, they might as call it like Affiliate Booze Summit because it's kind of what it was like. I don't know what it's like now. I haven't been in years, but that's kind of what I'm expecting. And I was like, man, how am I going to go to these things without drinking and without being who I am? And I noticed that I had a little bit of anxiety, which I even had when I was drinking. Like, when I drank, the first 15 minutes of anything was anxious. Even if I, had a good fill me up before I went, I still had these anxieties. And I noticed at this video conference, here I am sober, new group of people, like one guy I hadn't seen since high school, so I was kind of like, okay, it's going to be a little weird. And a new group of people, and I noticed I was anxious for 15 minutes, just like when I used to drink, but it went away after 15 minutes, right? So where I thought the alcohol was actually doing me service, it was just a natural course of things, right? So did you notice that as well, where it's like, you gave alcohol way too much credit than it deserved?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it kind of took away the inhibitions at first. I mean, that started way back in high school with those parties where you go and somebody's parents went away and there's a keg and you pay $2 for a cup and you get all the beer you can drink, and I still, I was uncomfortable at those parties even after I started drinking, but some of the inhibitions went away a little bit. But I couldn't stand that small talk standing around, and the alcohol helped with that. But then it kind of was the go-to answer for much of my adult life.
Yeah.
And eventually it wasn't the answer. It didn't help. And I just learned that trying to be me and not worried about what other people are thinking or things like that, letting go of what other people's thoughts are, would without alcohol, without me drinking alcohol, seemed to help a lot.
Yeah.
And sure, there's still anxiety, absolutely, but it gets less and less, and you know, you learn to deal with it. It's just a normal feeling that we have, and it's okay.
Yeah. And it's interesting because a lot of recovery meetings that I've gone to, I hear a common theme. And the common theme is I didn't feel comfortable in my own skin.
Right.
And it's like, okay, what does that mean? Well, that means that there's kind of like a crisis of identity. It's like you want to be this person and you feel like you're not, and you don't feel comfortable in your own body, in your own mind. I think probably more mind, because I don't think, you know, we're like, hey, you know, body. I'm sure some people do struggle with that. But I think mostly it's a mental issue where you're like, I don't feel comfortable being me. I don't feel comfortable with my thoughts. I feel like if Terry knew what I thought, or if these people knew what I thought every day, then they wouldn't like me, or they wouldn't want to be around me. And the funny thing you learn when you get sober is like everyone has this. They just don't talk about it, right? Everyone's sitting there with weird ass thoughts because that's just the way our minds work. And when you bring it up, you know, like I remember when I first brought up the idea that I hid my beers under the grates of the barbecue thing. Like you have those little heat shields and they fit perfectly there. Not that you should go do that, but they fit perfectly. Just like right under. If you enjoy 90-degree beer, that's just, you know, I think even an Englishman would be like, bro, dude, hey, chap, or whatever they say. And I found out, hey, other people were doing that too. So a lot of times it's really a bullshit notion of what we think we are and what we think people see us as. Yeah. And really, when you get down to it, it's like, you know, I don't think that's the case. And it's a big world, and there's going to be someone that relates to you. Going to be probably like 1,000 someones that relate to you. So yeah, and put your comments in the box. Do you guys have that feeling of, I don't feel comfortable in my own skin and my own brain? Is that kind of what you deal with? What does sobriety look like for you? If you're sober, what's it look like? What do you do every day? Yeah, our lawnmower guy likes to start when I do webinars, and my office is built in the backyard, so he like literally goes around it.
Yep, I can hear it.
He's out there. Sometimes he comes weed whacking around, and he's like right up by the door, and I'm like, dude, you know, whatever. And he's not like set to a schedule, so it's not like, hey, you know what, let's push the webinar back an hour. It's like, no, you don't even know when he's coming. It's just random. So, but yeah, you know, that's a big thing. So I think we look at it, and like Meg says, the alcohol gives me confidence I don't have without it. Vodka, it makes me feel good and calm and relaxed, but it's destroying my life at the same time. And I could totally relate to that. I know what that's like. I know what it's like to feel like you need alcohol to have confidence. But what I want to challenge you with is the fact that the confidence is there, right? So, like, you have alcohol. Let's pretend this is not San Pellegrino and it's actually alcohol, right? And you have the alcohol, and you're like, I'm going to drink this alcohol. Now, you look at it. Is there any confidence in and of alcohol? No. Like, if you like wine, it's crushed up grapes. There's no confidence in there. If it's vodka, which, I don't know, that was not my go-to drink, but I did have that towards the end because it looked like water, and I fooled everyone. Well, I fooled myself. But there's no confidence there. The confidence is in you, right? So you're using something external to shut off the voice that says you have no confidence, right? So you got this voice, and it says, hey, I have no confidence. I have no confidence. And you drink, and it goes away, and you're like, I have confidence. Really, you don't have a confidence problem. You have a little voice problem, right? And when you learn to say, hey, this little voice doesn't mean anything. He just wants me to be shy because I'm afraid that I'll get made fun of. I'll get hurt. Someone won't like me. My joke won't go over well. I got to tell you, in sobriety, I've had a lot of jokes just flop. I'm still good. People are still friends with me. You know, I've had quite a few flopping jokes on the trainings here. But what do you think about that, Terry? Because I know we have different views on confidence and stuff like that.
You know, that little voice inside me did tell me that that the alcohol would give me confidence. But you know, in reality, it was absolutely the opposite thing. When I was drinking, I I was drinking at times I shouldn't be drinking.
Mm-hmm.
And I would do that because I thought it made me feel better. I'd be smarter. I'd have the right answers. I'd be funnier, whatever. But in reality, half of my mind was being taken up by the fact that I had to hide the fact that I'd been drinking because no one else had been drinking. Or if everyone was drinking, I had had a lot more than them, and I needed to try to maintain. And it was taking up space in my brain to actually have an intelligent conversation with people, or be productive in what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that was just that little voice, that alcoholic voice telling me that, oh yeah, it'll be okay, you'll be fine. And it just got reinforced and reinforced throughout life until I was just drinking constantly, and then I realized that this wasn't going to work. But the alcohol had me, so I had to keep drinking. So my answer to that was just to isolate, drive everyone out of my life, and then I had plenty of confidence sitting in my house. I thought everything was perfectly fine
Yeah.
until
And
it
Dr.
wasn't.
Phil helped
And
too, right?
like Meg's saying, it was destroying my life at the same time. And I totally relate to exactly what you're saying. Is it makes me feel good and calm and relaxed. That was until the day I stopped drinking. I liked the feeling alcohol gave me. It did not stop working for me in that respect. It helped me calm down. After, the 2 minutes after that first drink, after, walking down to the liquor store, I had that feeling. And that's what I chased constantly, because that feeling would last shorter and shorter time. And the alcohol absolutely was destroying my life. It almost did. But I was able to stop. And
Now, for you, I know for me, it took a while to get there, but I can get that relaxed feeling today. Like, I know for me today, I'm like, I've learned methods of relaxing, calming down, taking the voices that are there, the things that I hear, the you're not good enough, you're not confident enough, or whatever, and kind of like saying, well, that doesn't really matter. I'm okay right now. That doesn't matter. I'm going to be okay. And is it like that for you? Did you get a way to still be able to relax, or are you just wired all the time without booze?
well, the number one thing, which is the first thing is to actually stop drinking.
Mm-hmm.
And stop. Once I stopped drinking, I didn't have to lie anymore. And that was the biggest thing that really helped me calm down. But there's a lot of tools that I use as well. Tools for myself to not drink, and doing things like this, helping other people that may be struggling. That's one of the tools I use. But little tools, like when I wake up, grab my cup of coffee, go outside, sit and relax, and just kind of think about, try not to think, just try to be calm. Start the day off in a calm way, rather than waking up to get that cup of coffee, eat breakfast, take a shower. Here we go, 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 go. I try to take time for myself first thing in the morning. Throughout the day, if I have to step away from a stressful situation and I'm able to, I do. Or if I'm in that stressful situation, I just try to tell myself it's okay. Just deal with what I can deal with, not with what I can't deal with. Don't stress out about those things that I don't have the control over. And it's an ongoing process. And of course, we have times where things are going to become overwhelming, and we just have to deal with it and take it one item at a time, and try to relax and try not to do too much. I also, when I stopped drinking, I simplified my life. Just the fact that I did stop drinking, my life got simpler. But I try not to take on too much. Too many things I try not to get too many things that are going on in my life, especially the stressful situations, where I've learned when I can walk away and when I need to deal with something. And it seems to help a lot.
That's cool. And one thing I was telling my daughter the other day, because she deals with racing thoughts and stuff, and I'm like, one thing that I learned, because we never really are taught how our minds work. Like no one ever sat down. Like where is that class in high school where it's like, here's how your brain works, ladies and gentlemen. I didn't get a ticket to that class. And I was talking to her, and I'm like, the mind is a good servant, but a terrible master. It's a terrible master. If you let your mind and your thoughts be the master, as if they own everything, as if everything they say carries weight, then you're going to be hosed, because your thoughts change moment to moment. And I know a lot of times, I've gone to therapies, and therapist after therapist has told me something that I disagree with, and they say that no one can make you feel anything. And I'm like, okay, well, that kind of isn't true, because I can make someone feel afraid, someone feel scared, right? That's something you can do. It's bad, but I mean, the fact is you could do that. You could make someone sad. You could make up a lie and tell someone something and they'll be sad. So you can do that. And when you realize that your thoughts and your feelings are kind of on an autopilot, right? They're kind of doing their things. And it's like someone cuts you off in traffic, and, your mom yelled the F word when that happened. So what do? You yell the F word. Or whatever it is. For me, one of the things is like, it's very difficult for me to listen to a woman yell. Just the way I was raised, it's very difficult. And I talk to people, and I'm like, I feel like they're yelling at me, and they're like, no, dude, she's not yelling at you. Something's wrong with you. And we have to look at that and be like, okay, well, I know that's something in me. Now, if I take that like I took it when I was drinking, and I'm like, everyone's yelling at me, it's the truth. It's no one knows it like I do. Then you're letting the mind be the master rather than letting it be the servant, right? Letting it just do its thing. And there's this idea that I came across when I got sober of the idea of Zen Buddhism, where they talk about mind, no mind. They talk about what would it be like to have a thoughtless mind, right? Can you shut your thoughts off? And I remember I told it on one of the stories here on my channel, where we were talking to this guy. My therapist had brought in this Buddhism teacher who was going to teach me about meditation. And I was the kind of guy that was like, we got businesses to run, we got stuff to do, we got kids, we got dogs, we got this, we got that. I mean, there ain't no time for this. And this guy was going to tell me how meditation worked. And the universe somehow planned this out to where I got a guy who had a speech difficulty. And so here I am in my own brain being so self-absorbed and so full of myself. And this guy's trying to say these sentences, and they're not coming out. They're slow. And I'm like, I want to finish them. I want to finish them. And I'm like being a total dick because I want to finish them. And I couldn't listen to what the guy said because I was too busy listening in my own mind. Right. And even as you listen to us now, 90% of what you're hearing is probably your own mind's judgments on what we're saying. You're not really taking it in. And this is something I struggle with. So for those of you who said that on the channel, who said, hey, Marcus has a listening problem, I do. I know. I'm aware of it. I work on it. And that's kind of how it works. You have to look at it, and you have to look at the flaws. You got to look at the things, and you got to accept yourself as you are. I accept myself as the anxious person who goes to places and is anxious for a little bit. But I also know that it's going to calm down. I accept myself for being the person who couldn't sit still, but now I can, right? And we got to digress and look at that. Let's take a look at some of these other comments we got going on here.
Sure. Well, Charles said, I love my 6 IPAs every night, but the anxiety and panic attacks forced me to quit. Thankfully, 9 months sober. Meditation has done wonders. Awesome, Charles. Congratulations on 9 months. That's usually some of the most difficult times in the journey of sobriety. And I do a form of my own meditation, which is either hiking or cycling. And but I do know many people that sit and meditate, and they live by that. It helps clear the mind, helps them start off their day. Sometimes they meditate during the day. It's a good thing. It's a good practice to get into. And meditation is just there's no rules in meditating. It's whatever works for you, and just trying to get yourself recentered and calm yourself down. It's a good way to work with sobriety. One of the tools that can definitely be very helpful. Kevin says, I felt funnier, confident, and cool when drinking. the underlying theme is the ego wants to artificially have these qualities. And yeah, there you go. And Marcus just kind of mentioned that as far as you're not going to, that the bottle of alcohol doesn't have that confidence or the humor and the coolness in it. It's our mind telling us that it does. And we can be actually better in sobriety. And I find that. And actually now with a little bit of sobriety, I'm able to go to these things where other people are drinking. I don't go to those kegger parties. Well, I'm a little old for that now, but I try to stay away from the major alcohol-related events. But sometimes, you have to. And I'm able to go to those places, and you get about a couple hours into these events, and you can start seeing the conversation start to digress as people get drunker and drunker, and you start to learn when it's time to leave.
And you learn a lot about people.
Yeah.
I remember I was talking to someone, and she was like, "Do you remember everything?" I'm like, "I'm just paying attention because I'm not drunk. I remember everything, you know." And it's kind of good, and those qualities are in you. Like Kevin, you got those qualities, right? They're there, right? If people are laughing when you're drinking, they're going to laugh when you're not drinking too. They're not laughing because you have that. It's just shutting down that voice. So I think that's pretty important to realize.
Right. Evie, I relate to what you mentioned right there. I went to rehab, but I didn't get that right mindset from there that I was supposed to. I stopped going to meetings and want to do this without 12 steps /AA, and this channel has been very helpful. And I went to rehab, and I'm not saying that I didn't get the right mindset. I didn't have the right mindset when I left. It wasn't it. For me, sobriety is really my sobriety is my responsibility. And when I left rehab, I didn't want to stay sober. So I started drinking. I was able to quit drinking a month later, but I learned a lot there, and I learned what I needed to do. I just didn't do it, and that's how the rehab worked for me. It was still definitely a part of my journey, and it was absolutely a necessary part of my journey to getting sober. It's just it didn't work out to where I stayed sober immediately. It took a little bit longer. And as far as 12 steps and meetings and AA, it's, you have to figure out what works for you. And for some people it's AA or there's another one called Life Ring. And I actually do AA, but I go to, or I went to our hospital aftercare program as well. And I just, I did everything I possibly could for my sobriety because for me it's life and death. If I start drinking again, I'm probably not going to live. If what they say is true, as far as it gets worse every time, because I almost died last time. So I just try to keep an open mind, and I think the open mindset is the most important thing. Is not shutting away any form of recovery. Just trying to do everything, and if something isn't quite working out the right way, then try to steer towards something else. But it has to be a daily practice for me, at least.
Now,
and go ahead.
If we could look at that, because that's something that really interests me, is like, okay, what's the difference? If we could take a snapshot of the 30 days after you got out of rehab, can you see a difference in mindset or willingness versus the second time? And what were they? That's
a tough one for me. It was, I wasn't fully, I didn't make it my mindset to do everything I possibly could to stay sober. I really wasn't ready to stay sober. I think there was a little tiny bit inside me that I wanted to get through the detox, which was my biggest fear of getting sober, was detoxing, because every time I tried, it was hugely painful. So rehab got me through that. And then there was a tiny little piece inside of me that thought that, okay, now I'm through detox, I can start drinking a little bit, even though they told me that no matter how little I have, they told me this in rehab, no matter how little I have, I will go back to where I was. I still didn't believe them. And that was indeed the case. In fact, I was back to where I was in 2 days.
Got it.
Some people, it takes a lot longer, but yeah.
So it's like a commitment and a belief thing. So it's interesting because we look at that, and I think that's what really stops us is, one, a lack of commitment to it, right? Like, am I really going to do it? Because I know I tried many times. I didn't try with rehab until I actually tried with rehab, which did work from the get-go. And I look at that, like with Terry, like, what was the difference in the mindset? Well, the difference, number one, was I think we all hold on to the fact that one day we might be able to have one for whatever reason. Like, I mean, vodka, beer, whatever your poison is, it doesn't taste that great. So, I mean, stewing about it that long, it's not worth it. But we have that holding on. And if you have that holding on, like, well, maybe I'll just stop drinking and just have one before I go to the party just to take the edge off, right? Or maybe I'll do this, or maybe I'll do that. And I remember for me, I had in the back of the mind was like, shit, really? Like, I'm 34 years old. Am I not going to drink the rest of my life? What if I'm 80? What if, whatever? And these things went in my brain. But I think the fear of what's going to happen if I continue on the road, what's going to happen if I drink right now, was bigger than holding on at that point. Like,
yes.
If I drink, I am going to lose this, this, and this, and my sanity.
Right.
Therefore, I kind of put it in my mind like, okay, well, have another glass of insanity. You want one? Go have one, because you know what it does. And they always say that, the guy takes a drink, and then the drink takes a drink, and the drink takes a man, or however they phrase it. And what they mean by that is what happens is when you have that one, it lowers the inhibitions. We all know it lowers it. That's why we feel confident. That's why we feel funny. That's why we feel better, right? We know that is what happens. It's an inhibition thing. That's why people do stupid-ass crap when they're drunk, because it's like, well, hey, man, I can fly or whatever. And it's like, no, you can't. No. You can't skateboard. You can't do anything. So disclaimer, don't do anything. Don't drink. Don't do anything while drinking if you do decide to. But we got to look at that and say, that's not true, because what it's doing is it's dampening everything, right? So it's like taking the good with the bad. So it's dampening the bad, it's dampening the good, it's dampening everything, and it's even dampening the ability to stop having the next drink. Because I guarantee when you have a drink, you're like, that one wasn't that bad. It's a Bud Light, for crying out loud. There's hardly anything in it. Another one will be fine. And then you wake up the next morning and you're like, what the hell happened? Well, what happened is you lowered your inhibitions, and your inhibitions say, right, like right now, if you've been drinking alcohol for a while, your brain says, anxious, solution, drink. Sad, solution, drink. Happy, solution, drink. Everything, solution, drink. Now, it says that now in a sober mind. I know it says that now. Terry knows it says that now. But you put a beer or a vodka or whatever it is on that, that's going to get lowered. And it's going to go solution, drink.
Right.
Sounds pretty good. Right? And then you're just going to, it's just not going to be good. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah, for me, and kind of what you just explained is, for me, it was a matter of the next thing I was going to lose was more important than the bottle. And I had to find it out for myself. It didn't matter what people told me. It's amazing that that was the case. One other thing that kept me from really searching out the sobriety and going back to the drink was I started to I isolated again. I got out of rehab, and they said, you have a game plan, and and of course I have a great game plan. This is what I'm going to do. You spend 30 days with nothing to do. You spend your whole time learning how to answer the guys the right way. That's what I did. And I go back to my childhood, and I don't think I ever had a serious, deep conversation with my parents or with anybody in my life. And I I get out of rehab and I'm supposed to go to meetings and talk to some stranger about serious stuff. I mean, I was like, no way. I'm not going to do that. Absolutely not. I've never done it before and I've made it this far, so why would I start now? And that just drove me into the isolation, and then I had nothing to do, and a drink sounded like a good idea. So that's another thing that may have caused me. I don't know why I started drinking again, except for all I can really say is I wasn't done yet. And yeah, that's kind of it right there. Kevin also said a little later, I have a lot of anxiety. However, I might not have had the courage to work through the anxiety on a very rudimentary, fundamental, and foundational level had I still been drinking. Absolutely. I mean, drinking keeps you from dealing with these deep issues. It puts a blanket over it, over the fire that's too big.
Yep.
And yeah, I'm sure, Marcus, you've dealt with a lot of anxiety, and you know how alcohol affects.
Yeah, and it actually, what's funny is alcohol lowers the things that we think it helps. So
Right.
you think that you have a solution for anxiety, and it dampens it, right? So your baseline of anxiety is like up here, and then you drink, and your baseline goes down here. And you drink, and what happens is now you need to drink a whole shit ton to get to normal level, which sucks, right? And now you're like me, where you can't even walk down your neighborhood because your legs literally cripple from anxiety, can't leave your house, can't go to functions, because your baseline has dropped so much. Same thing with confidence and courage, right? You're going to be like, wow, I got my liquid courage. I don't need my regular courage, right? And your regular courage drops and drops and drops. And years later, you're like, what is this man or woman I've become, where I can't go outside and I'm nervous to talk to like the mailman because I got the wrong package or whatever. And you look at it and it's like, is this really doing you the service that you think it's doing? And the answer is an emphatic, absolute no. You just think it is because you're feeling in the moment and you haven't noticed it, right? It's like the friend you had in high school who gets a girlfriend, and the girlfriend's like out of the group of friends, right? We've all had this buddy. And your friend starts to act different. And it's like, why is he like over there in the corner going, schmoopsy poo, I love you? And you're like, what the hell, dude? We play football and we cuss. We don't schmoopsy poo, you know? And he's acting like a total weirdo because he's got the girlfriend. Now, he hasn't noticed it because it's been gradual, right? And years down the road, you're like, wow, this dude's a total, you know, whatever, because he's just gradually changed. And whether it's good or bad, in that case, who knows? It's up for them to figure out. But in our case, oftentimes it's bad because we don't notice it, right? We don't notice our anxiety. We just notice, hey, I'm anxious, I drink, and it helps. That's all I know. It's like a push button thing. And we look at that. And instead, we got to draw back and be like, well, what was it like a year before I started drinking? Because I was always anxious, but I was never even close to as bad as I was when I was at the height of my drinking. Like,
Right.
if I compare that base level when the height of my drinking versus Marcus is a little nervous to talk to people, it's night and day. It's like mental hospital here, okay guy up here. And we got to look at that, because my belief is that we're all okay, right? I think Kevin's all right. I think Meg's all right. I think Charles is all right. And Ivy, I think we have the okay stuff, right? But I think we've been sold a bill of goods, and we've been sold a lie that says alcohol's helping and you need alcohol, right? Alcohol loves you to need it. It wants you to need it because it's going to take over, right? And you got to look at that and say, am I allowing this to change my base level? If you are, it's going to be very difficult to get back with alcohol because it's just going to keep happening. Now, once you have alcohol out of your system for 30, 45, 90 days or whatever, you're going to start to get back toward normal. I remember for me, I was super, super anxious. I'm still super anxious when I go to AA meetings. I go once in a while. I was going to go a couple nights ago. I've just been super tired. And our meeting that I like to go to is at 10:30 at night. So I'm like, that's late. I'm almost 40. That's late. So, but we
I
got to
don't
look
think
at
they have any meetings that late in my neck of the woods.
yeah, it's like the young people group, which I kind of like because The old group out here is like the old group. Um, and I just relate to young people probably because like I'm simple at heart or something. I don't know.
Right.
And I think young people groups are like below 50. I think that's kind of how it's classified. But we had a dude who's like 78 there. I'm like, okay, cool. He's young. I'm young. We're all young. Woohoo!
Well, we have a young person's group here. It's 30 and younger, most of the people,
Mhm.
and it's a huge group because there's quite a few young people that are trying to get sober.
Yeah, yeah, and I just like the conversation a little better. But I'm still pretty anxious going to them. I'm still like anxious going to church, which is why I don't go. I know my family sometimes wants to go, and I'm like, yeah, I'm good. That's also because I have a lot of back drama in my life about church. But, you know, I can still go and I can be there. And I know my anxiety now is less bad than it was when I was drinking. Like, I remember I'd go to church when I was drinking. It was real bad. So all right. Let's take some questions here.
I'll take them since you're coughing. Very grateful you are holding this conference. I've considered this topic recently. Maybe I can go back to controlled drinking. At the same time, I have to remind myself. That I guess that means that you have to remind yourself that you can't go back to controlled drinking. I'm not sure exactly what you're saying, but I can't go back to controlled drinking, and I was going to say I wish I could, but no, I don't wish I could. I'm absolutely.
You did lose the stream. Yeah, we have complete.